These are the 4.2 notes for pre-calc. We are going to be sketching, graphing the polynomial functions that we talked about yesterday. So you have 4 steps at the top, and we're just going to follow each of these 4 steps as we graph. So the first step says to find all the zeros or the x-intercepts and decide if they touch or cross. So if you need a refresher on that, pull out your 4.1 notes. Example number 1, I have an x squared, which means this first part is going to give me a 0 of 0 with a multiplicity of 2. And because 2 is an even multiplicity, it's going to touch. This right here is going to get me a positive 3 with a multiplicity of 1. Remember, multiplicity is just the exponent that goes along with it. And 1 is odd, so it's going to cross. Then I'm going to plot those on my graph. 0. And I'm going to put a little T for touch. That's going to help later on when I actually graph this. And a 3 right here. Then I'm going to put a little C for cross. All right, that's step number 1. Step number 2, I need to determine the degree and the end behavior. So this is step 1. Step 2, the degree is going to be 3. I've got 2 from the x squared and 1 from the x. And then the end behavior is going to be based off that degree and whether it's positive or negative. I look at the very first sign, which is positive. So this is a degree 3 positive, which means my graph end behavior is going to look like this. Again, you can get all of this from your 4.1 notes. Step number 3, find the y-intercept by plugging in 0 for x, and then plot the point. So step 3, I'm going to plug in a 0 for both of these x's over here. So it's going to look like 0 squared and 0 minus 3. Then I just work that out. 0 squared is 0. 0 minus 3, negative 3, and I multiply those to make 0. That's my y-intercept. With all that information, I can now sketch the graph. Step number 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I start in the bottom left corner of this graph. So start down here. You're going to come up to each of these intercepts, the 0 and the 3, and you're either going to touch them and bounce away or cross through them. And then you end up here. So come, and you notice the 0 is already plotted, so I didn't have to make that y-intercept. You're going to come up, touch it, bounce away from it, and then cross all the way through it. It doesn't matter how low the dip is. It doesn't matter where you start on the left or end on the right. As long as you got that general idea, it's going to be a perfect sketch. All right, let's do the same thing for the next problem. Let's find the zeros. This would give me a 0 of 0 again. Remember, anytime you have an x in front, it's going to be 0. Multiplicity of 1. 1 is odd, so this is going to cross. The second factor would be a 4. Multiplicity of 1. And again, that's going to cross. There's step 1. Step 2, I'm going to decide my degree. This looks like it's just a degree 2. And it's a negative because I have this negative in front of that 3x. A degree 2 negative will look like a parabola that's been flipped upside down. Step 3, find my y-intercept by plugging in a 0. Negative 3 times 0, 0 minus 4. And again, I get another answer of 0. We come over and we plot the 0. And I'm going to put a C for cross. Plot the 4. Put another C for cross. The y-intercept would again be right here. So you're just putting a point over that point. And then to graph it, you're going to start in the bottom left and end on the bottom right. The only time you come up close to the x-axis is if you have a point there, if you have one of your zeros, your x-intercepts there. So start down here and go straight up to that point right here, cross through it, and then make sure you don't go too high because you're going to need to cross back down through it right there. So this one looks like it's just an upside down parabola. Example number 3. This -2 in front gives us nothing. So you can just ignore that. It doesn't give us one of the zeros because it has no x. This one right here, however, is a -1. Multiplicity of 2. Again, we're talking about that exponent right there. And 2 is even. Even multiplicities touch. This next one, +3. Multiplicity 1. And that's going to cross. I'll put those on the graph. Second step is to define my degree. Remember, which is just the total of all the exponents that you see. Total of all the x's. So that would be 2, 3 total. Nothing comes from this -2 in front. And it is a negative because of that negative sign in the very beginning. A negative degree 3 would start in the top left and finish in the bottom right. Your third step, find the y-intercept by plugging in a 0. Zero plus 1 is 1, and I square that to make 1. And 0 minus 3 is -3, and I just multiply all those out to get an answer of +6. So I'm going to need to make sure I actually put +6 on my y-intercept. Now, I don't know whether it crosses or touches. I don't have enough information to find that. So just do kind of whatever flows best as you draw your graph. We're going to start in the top left, end in the bottom right. So anywhere up in this region you can start. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to come down. I'm going to touch this. And touch means I touch it and I come back the same way. And then make sure you go through that point and then come down and cross through. Example number 4. I'm going to give you guys just a second to see if you can find all the zeros and their multiplicity and whether they cross or touch. Check your answer, make sure you got those. See if next you can find the degree. This one's a degree 4 positive. Last thing before we graph is our y-intercept. Take a second and work through that. Another answer of 0. A lot of times you're going to get an answer of 0. That's not uncommon. We'll put our 3 x-intercepts, our 3 zeros, on the graph. So I have first a 0 and a little t for touch, 2, c for cross, and -3, c for cross. My y-intercept is already right here plotted in the middle, so I don't have to do that as an extra point. And then we're ready to graph. We're going to start in the top left and end in the top right. Now, make sure that you don't go through the x-axis anywhere except where I have the blue dots. So one common mistake I'll see students make is they'll start over here and then they'll come down and they'll cross through. You can't cross through right here because there wasn't a point there. So the only times you can cross through or even touch the x-axis is at one of these blue points. So when you start up here, the first thing you need to do is come down to this point, cross through it, and then don't go too far because the next place you have to go is this, touch it, bounce off, cross through it, and finish it up like that. So it's kind of a weird looking W shape. Right. Example 5. Here we have this 1/2 in front. It's not really going to do much for us as far as giving us any zeros. So I'm just going to move straight on to this next one. X plus 4 is the factor, which means -4 would be the 0, what I could plug in to give me an answer of 0. Multiplicity of 1. It's going to cross. I'm just going to put a C for cross because I'm getting lazy. Next one is a -2. Multiplicity of 1, and again, cross. The third would be 2, positive. Multiplicity of 1, and cross. The degree, the total of all the x's represented, looks like 3. And the very first sign that I see at the very beginning of the problem is a positive. If it was a negative, there would be a negative stuck right up in front there, and I don't see that, so I know it's a positive. All right, a positive degree 3, if you reference your 4.1 notes, looks like this. And then we find our y-intercept. We'll plug a 0 in for all of the x's. That'll help us find our y-intercept. Take a moment, see if you can simplify that, find your answer. When I multiply all those things together, I end up with an answer of -8 for my y-intercept. Let's put these on our graph. -4 is one of my zeros, or x-intercepts, cross. -2, cross. +2, cross. I highly suggest putting the little C's or T's next to the dots. It makes it significantly easier. And now let's put my y-intercept on. I actually have to put it on this time since it isn't 0. It's not already marked. So I need to start in the bottom left and end in the top right. So anywhere again down in this region is a good starting point. So start down here. The first dot you're going to go to is this one. So come up here and then decide, are you crossing through it or just touching it? C means cross, so cross through it. Don't go too far because now the next dot you have to go to is right here, so cross back through it. Then you come all the way down and then all the way back up, cross through, and make sure you end at the top right. Make sure you go in order as you get your dots. So one thing I don't want to see, don't do this. Don't cross, 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 and then somehow kind of try to come back to this. Okay, you have to go in order. So the smallest number has to be the first thing that you graph, and then just get each point in order. So one more time, that would be cross, cross, come back, get that y-intercept, come all the way back up and cross. Okay.